Good morning. Welcome to the Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. I am Liz Folser. I am your worship host today. I'm also the vice president of this congregation, and I welcome you here. I'm very happy to be here helping out during the first Sunday of our minister, Reverend Dr. Suzanne Intrigligator's medical leave. Suzanne had knee replacement surgery on Friday. I checked in with her this morning. She's doing very well. She's up and walking around and feels it really couldn't have gone any better. If you would like to provide a meal to the Intrigligator family during this time, you can find a link to a meal train in the midweek update. And if you want to just send a card, feel free to send cards to the church office, and we'll make sure she gets them. All the information you need to know about the next couple of weeks is in the midweek update. I will just announce that there is a potluck scheduled for next weekend. We need volunteers for setup and cleanup, and if you can help with that or you need more information, please reach out to Jennifer Fanning. Our service today is called Democracy in Peril. Leading our service via Zoom is Reverend Ashley Horan, the Organizing Strategy Director at the UUA, where she leads the team that holds all the outward-facing justice work of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are delighted to welcome her to Melrose, albeit virtually. Thank you to our ushers today, Richard Sabota and Don Bissix, our greeter, Wendy Mastronardi, our coffee host, Gretchen Locke. These are relatively simple tasks that help turn our worship service into a gathering of community. And now it's time for our moment of weekly greeting. I invite people on Zoom to turn to gallery view, and we can all wave at each other. And welcome to any guests and visitors we have. We're thrilled to have you with us.
Our call to worship this morning comes from the Reverend Elizabeth Mount. Come into this place, bringing all you hold with you. Though your heart be heavily burdened, whether you be on the brink of tears or you burn with unquenchable rage, this community can hold you and your strongest emotions. Yes, even the messy ones are welcome here. Come in if you sing just a bit too loud, or if you hold still as statues and just breathe in. If you sway to the music moving in your soul, you are welcome. Come in and say amen when the Spirit moves you. Tell that preacher to preach. Yes, that's right. Tell us. Or close your eyes and quietly let your mind float free on blessed words. Come into this place with every piece of yourself gathered up, and let us be the church incarnate. Let us bring forth the spirit of all that we love by the words of our mouths and the doing of our hands as we make sacred this time together. Come, let us worship together. And now together we light the symbol of our living faith, the flaming chalice. Here to light it and lead us in our covenant is board member at large, Janice Bissix.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join me in the words of our covenant, which you can see on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God.
Please remain standing if you would, and join the choir and me for our opening hymn, Gentle Angry People, number 170, in your great hymnal.
You may be seated. Our story today is Sophia Valdez, Future Prez, by Andrea Beatty and illustrated by David Roberts. Sophia was a baby who got things done, helping her family before she turned 1. She and Abuelo went out every week to help elderly friends around Blue River Creek who couldn't get out and about on their own and with no place to gather were stuck home alone. Raking the leaves, taking pets for a walk, or just dropping by for a treat and a talk. Sophia Valdez did as much as she could for her family and her friends and her whole neighborhood. A dreamer, a doer, a real-life go-getter. Most people like good. Sophia liked better. Each morning, Abuelo walked Sophie to class. They walked home again along Blue River Pass, making plans, munching cookies, Abuelo and girl. Except for that Tuesday when Pup saw a squirrel. With a howl, Pup took off, racing all through the town, over, under, beneath, and around. Sophia scrambled to try to keep up with the hollering man and the bellowing pup. Up the squirrel ran to the top of a hill made of leftover junk for the local landfill. They reached the tip top of that mountain of trash, which jiggled and broke with an ear-splitting crash. Down they all tumbled and hit with a thud on a moldy old pumpkin surrounded by mud. Ouch, cried Abuelo. He struggled to stand. A dangerous mess, he said, grasping her hand. The next day, Sophia walked to school solo, but it wasn't the same without her Abuelo. "This is not right," declared young Sophia, who glared at Mount Trashmore and got an idea. The very next morning at dawn, she planted a sign at the front of the lawn. She stood back and smiled, and Pup gave a bark. "Get rid of Mount Trashmore. Let's build a new park." Each of her neighbors had something to say about benches and fountains and places to play, meeting spots, gardens, a basket for bees, a rubber duck pond, and a kiosk for cheese. She drew every thought on her map of the park, which was perfectly perfect by a quarter till dark. She drifted to sleep in her soft, cozy bed. Then, bam, she woke when a thought smacked her head. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized each one of her neighbors had said, "Let me know when it's done." They all thought Sophia could build it alone, but how could one girl do so much on her own? The weight of the thought made her tender heart ache as night thunder growled and she lay wide awake. Then dawn brought a storm and the gloomy sky wept, and the heartsick Sophia finally slept. Abuelo baked cookies when Sophia got up. He gave her a bagful and sneaked one to Pup. He blinked back a tear as he hugged his Sophia. "For courage," he whispered, "Te amo, mi vida." Sophia's knees wobbled. She felt weak inside. She looked at his ankle and quite nearly cried. Though she didn't feel brave or courageous at all, Sophia Valdez went to face City Hall. The mayor's office sent her to room 401, the Blue River Creek Department of Fun, which sent her downstairs to room 302, the Office of Duck Ponds and Cool Things to Do, to the Office of Monkeys, the Department of Cheese, the Division of Fountains and Meetings and Bees, then down to the basement so musty and cramped where all the town's papers were sorted and stamped, and that's where the clerk said what no one else did. "You can't build a park. You're only a kid." The words smacked Sophia down in her heart. Her plan was kiboshed before it could start. "I think," said Sophia, "I think that law's wrong." But her second grade voice didn't sound very strong. The clerk said, "Clearly, it cannot be done. Do you have any questions?" Sophia said, "One. If you were me, and if I was you, and he was your grandpa, what would you do?" Well, said the clerk. Then she said nothing at all. She thought, then sent out a call to every employee throughout City Hall. The entire government of Blue River Creek crammed into the office to hear Sophie speak, but her words jumbled up and her cheeks turned bright red as a dozen emotions rushed into her head. Her heart beat so loudly she thought it would crack. The crowd leaned in closer. Sophia leaned back. Then her arm brushed the edge of the old cookie sack, and that was the moment when Sophia first knew. Being brave means doing the things you must do, though your heart cracks with fear, though you're just in grade 2. She took a deep breath, looked the mayor in the eye, and though her knees wobbled, she held her head high. Sophia started talking. She spelled out her plan and why it all mattered and how it began. And once she got rolling, she had lots to say about meeting spots, monkeys, and places to play, and other ideas for things they could do to help the town elders and other folks too. She had thoughts on the library, thoughts on the zoo, and perhaps a way to combine the two. And "All right," cried the mayor, "go start a petition. If the town wants a new park, we'll form a commission." And so young Sophia got right to work with some help from her family and Pup and the clerk. Then others joined in, not all, but a few, like Miss Lila Greer and the kids in grade 2. There were hearings and surveys and taxes to figure, then bulldozers, cranes, and a blue bigger digger. They all built that park. That's how it got done, with the hard work of, by, and for everyone. But it began with the dream of one person, just one, who laced up her shoes and then led the way to help Blue River Creek get a new place to play. Now every evening till long after dark, the town comes together at Citizens Park. They all hold this truth to be self-evident, that Sofia Valdez could grow up to be president. Until then, Sophia, that real-life go-getter, helps Blue River Creek get better and better. All right, and now I invite the children to join me in going down to our RE class.
Each week, we take a few minutes out for prayer and meditation, a time for each of us and all of us together to center ourselves and connect with the holy. Let's start by relaxing into our pews, feeling our feet on the floor, letting our bodies settle. Let us breathe in and out together. In this meditation time, first we'll join in our centering song. Then we'll sit for a few moments in shared silence. Then we will speak to one another our joys and sorrows. And then Reverend Ashley will lead us in a prayer. Our themes for October are courage and our second UUA principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. It's a month to think about how we, both as individuals and as a church community, can create and share the courage to work for a more just and loving world. Our centering song for the month is called Meditation on Breathing. It's number 1009 in the Teal hymnal. Lyrics will appear on the screen, and Tom will lead us in singing. Join in as you like, and let the song guide you gently into shared silence. Every Sunday, we share with one another the joys and sorrows of our lives, our personal milestones. We listen with openness and compassion, letting this sharing weave us into a stronger community. First, if folks on Zoom have a sorrow to share today, please type it into the chat box now, and I will read it aloud. And if folks here in the room have a sorrow to speak, you may come forward now. Let's go ahead.
Just a candle of support for my dear friend Heather, who's having a serious surgery on Thursday.
Hi, I'm Beth Urabrow, and I wanted to express sorrow for the people that are victims of man-made atrocities in Ukraine and Russia and other parts of the world, and the natural disasters in Cuba, Florida, and North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Ringen. To kind of back up, that's a friend of Lee's from his childhood, lives in Fort Myers. Wasn't sure if she could get out. Thankfully, she did get out. But we think that her home is basically destroyed. So she needs to find a new place to live. And then up here, it's been a challenging week for us. Chris is going to be away for a few days, and I've got to deal with all the girls' stuff on top of that too. So just think of all of us.
Anne sent a candle of concern for her sister-in-law, Maureen, who will spend much of October at Dana-Farber undergoing a bone marrow transplant. The doctors are quite hopeful for a good outcome. Let us take a moment together to hold all these sorrows. May those who are hurting today know our love and support. May we reach out with kindness. Don, if you would light the gray candle as a beacon of care for all the sorrows spoken and unspoken today. And now I ask for all the joys that you'd like to share. Folks on Zoom can type them in the chat box, and I'll read them aloud. Folks here in the room with a joy to share can come forward now.
I'm Mary Delahanty, and my joy is that we tried something new at our Bread of Life meal on Thursday. We cooked for 125 people and then needed to come up with dessert. I put a call out to the community, and lo and behold, we had 4 cookie bakers who helped, and we had 2 more people that said, I'm happy to help another time. And that is a great joy, and I hope we do it again.
Hi, my name is Doug Dick, and I'm just celebrating returning from a week of visiting with my parents in South Dakota, who are both 90, and hanging in there, and the rest of my family and a wedding in Wyoming. It was a wonderful trip back home for me.
From Suzanne, a candle of gratitude for my excellent surgeon and care team, and also to this wonderful church for holding me in their care. From James, a joy that Reverend Suzanne's surgery went so well, and a joy for all the support and care from the MUUC community. Don, if you would light the last candle. And thank you for all for sharing these joys. Light one more candle to shine out our thanks for the many blessings in our lives.
And I invite you now to join me in the spirit of attention and intention that is prayer. Today, I offer the words of my colleague, the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Savage. Spirit of life, eternal beloved of mystery and grace, receive this prayer. We come before that which is greater than ourselves in gratitude for the fullness of our lives, for the anguish and grief that informs our mission to side with love again and again, for the suffering and disenfranchisement of our people that foments our passion for justice and wholeness, for complex lives, for hard lives, for real, full, and overwhelmed lives. We give thanks for the blessings that we have been given, the reassurance of community, the steady warmth of hope, and the unwavering faith that there will be better days. We give thanks and seek your grace. Spirit of love, come alongside with all the holy nudges that we need, so that we may live in such a way that we celebrate all the blessings that we have been given, so we may be the blessings in the world. May it be so. Blessed be, Ashe, and Amen.
This church is a self-supporting organization funded by your generous annual pledge. You may also contribute to our weekly collection plate, which we split every month with a deserving cause. Folks on Zoom can donate either way using the orange button at the top right corner of our homepage at melroseuu.org. For the month of October, in recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day, we will be giving half our collection plate to the Massachusetts Ponkapog Tribal Council, who are the modern-day descendants of the people who stewarded for many generations this land where our church now sits. So, have you ever imagined what it might be like if we replaced the Star-Spangled Banner with a modern alternative, an actually honest national anthem? Well, the songwriter Jean Roa asked herself exactly that, and she came up with this song, which was requested by our choir anthem today by our guest speaker. This is National Anthem, Arise, Arise, by Jean Roa.
Strange of tears, an electric chair.
Responsibility to be guardians of our liberty, till tyrants fall to people's dream, and justice flows like a mighty stream. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire.
Singers, that was so beautiful. Thank you. Beloveds, it is a pleasure to be with you today. I'm sending my healing and loving prayers to you, Reverend Dr. Suzanne. So grateful for the care team that took care of you this week, and gratitude for this congregation for welcoming me this morning. So I came into my first ministry a little over 10 years ago, after there had been this knockdown, drag out fight at this congregation that I served. It was a 165-year-old congregation, and the conflict was heated. The battle lines were very stark, and the division was between those who advocated for inviting the spirit of life into the sanctuary by painting the walls a warm lilac color, and then those who insisted that a bold aubergine was the only path towards spiritual wholeness. It turns out that we all have big feelings about our spiritual homes. I'm sure you are all much better behaved than this particular congregation, but you can imagine that when the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America began the process of merger, there was a massive negotiation to determine what kind of church those two bodies would create together. At the very first General Assembly of the newly formed Unitarian Universalist Association, the Commission on Merger presented a set of bylaws. And among other things, the bylaws enumerated the new UUA's what they called corporate purposes, most of which will likely ring a bell to you if you're at all familiar with our contemporary 7 principles. And if you're following along at home, the current bylaws under Article 2 are again under revision and consideration. So pay attention. There's a really interesting dialogue happening around that right now. So anyway, this first set of purposes included things like to strengthen one another in free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of religious fellowship, and to implement our vision of one world by striving for a world community founded on ideals of brotherhood, justice, and peace. And then there was the third one: to affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relationships. Now, to quote a popular song from Sesame Street of my childhood, one of these things is not like the other. So you take those 6 purposes in those 1961 bylaws, and this one is the only one that leads with a religious belief: the supreme worth of every human personality and the dignity of man. Now, we may or may not forgive them their sexist language of the time, but this belief draws from the Universalist and the Unitarian legacies. It's what's called our theological anthropology, which is, $1 million seminary word for basically saying what we believe about human nature. And our theological anthropology, ours of inherent worth and dignity rather than of depravity and sin, is what fundamentally separated liberal religion from other forms of Christianity for many hundreds of years. So then they start off grand, lofty, sweeping theological assertion about human nature that is fundamentally good. And then they immediately veer into a particular form of governance. Why? So I want to listen to it again. To affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relationships. It's an if-then statement. If we believe that humans are endowed with inalienable worth and dignity, then we must create institutions and societies in which every person is equally empowered to determine, as a part of a collective, what is best for the people. If people are born with those twin blessings of agency and conscience, then they must be trusted to govern themselves. Neither the Universalists nor the Unitarians had previously had the word democracy in any of their covenants or statements of belief. But remember that the group that wrote this statement arrived at the table in 1960, having witnessed the past 2 decades of global rise of fascism and authoritarianism, a world war that revealed the depths of human evil through the Holocaust and the unleashing of the atom bomb. They were living through the hysteria of the Red Scare and McCarthyism, alongside the rise of the civil rights movement in the United States. So is it any wonder then that the original purposes boldly asserted a theological anthropology of inherent worth and dignity, intertwined with a commitment to the practice of democracy as the truest way to honor that understanding of human nature? At its root, democracy is an ancient and simple concept. Those of you who love an etymology corner, here we go. From the Greek demos, the people, and kratia, power or rule, democracy simply means a system of government by which the people rule themselves. Now, maybe the most famous definition of democracy is usually attributed to Abraham Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address, which ends that a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. I'm sure some of you had to memorize that in grade school like I did. But did you know that Lincoln cribbed those words from a speech made about 13 years earlier by the Unitarian minister, Reverend Theodore Parker? In 1850, at the New England Anti-Slavery Society Convention, Parker argued that the brutality of chattel slavery was directly at odds with what he called the 3-part American idea, that 1, all people are created equal, and 2, have certain inalienable rights, and 3, therefore, the government's job is to ensure that everyone can access those rights. Theodore Parker concluded, this idea demands a democracy. That is, a government of all the people, by all the people, for all the people. Now that keyword that Parker has 3 times and that Lincoln omitted, all, that omission could be the story of this nation, a country that aspires to liberty and justice for each and every one of us, but whose leaders have consistently failed to create the conditions of possibility for such a reality. For those among us who are poor or undocumented or Black or Indigenous or people of color or trans or queer or female or disabled or, in the words of Langston Hughes, America never was America to me. But for Theodore Parker, And for so many political philosophers and theologians before and since, even though our society has yet to fully realize its promise, democracy remains our best hope for a truly equitable society with liberty and justice for all. Why? Again, because of our theological anthropology. While our Universalist and Unitarian traditions rejected the notion of sin and depravity, we also acknowledge that humans can commit evil. Because of our deep belief that we are all born from a deep love that never lets us go, we believe that the people as a whole retain an unbreakable connection to that same source of goodness and creativity. Therefore, we trust neither Messiah nor monarch. Rather, we trust that the more of all the people who get to decide what is done to all the people, the more likely that we will err on the side of mutual care, support, and freedom for all the people. So it does make sense that democracy holds such a central place in modern day Unitarian Universalism. Our current principles, as you probably remember, they're right inside your hymnal if you want to look at them. They include a commitment to affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Even though our society has yet to fully realize its promise, our UU theology proposes that robust democracy is both a religious practice and our best hope for a truly equitable society. Now, I don't have to tell you that democracy is under attack, both here in the US and across the globe. The strategy of the radical right is to make it legal for a small group of people to control the bodies and restrict the agency of the rest of the people. But I want to suggest that the task of resuscitating, reimagining, of reincarnating democracy is fundamentally a spiritual and religious one. And I think it's the most urgent of our time. As spiritual communities and as religious leaders, our faith calls us to the holy work of building a society in which the potential in each of us is realizable by all of us. Now, I want to be clear, I am very much a cynic about the actual forms that democracy has taken thus far in human history. When it comes to both the state and the church, our reality has fallen wildly short of our aspirations, and our institutions are undeniably flawed. But fortunately, the promise of democracy lies in a belief not that institutions are infallible, but that the people together will gravitate toward the common good and collectively be better than the sum of our individual parts. In my paid work, as Liz told you earlier, I serve as the organizing strategy director for our modern day Unitarian Universalist Association. And in that work, I lead the team that holds all of the outward facing work of the UUA under the banner of Side with Love and our related campaigns. And in this work, I get reminded every day that democracy is so much more than a political ideology or a system of governance. As a spiritual and religious practice, the embodiment of democracy is a constant praxis, a cycle of learning, reflection, and action toward enlarging the we, collaboratively building a reality in which power is shared, self-determination is unfettered, and reverence for life is fundamental. My work reminds me that every day, the religious and spiritual practice of democracy can look like our UU the Vote campaign that thousands of our siblings in faith are engaging in right now, probably some of you as well. Those folks are out there knocking on doors and registering voters and fighting for our values at the ballot box. But democracy can also look like the opening of doors of the congregation to a family of undocumented immigrants, or a crowd of Black Lives Matter protesters. It can look like multi-faith coalitions creating networks of hospitality and resources so that everyone can access abortion and gender-affirming care, even if it's illegal in their states. It can look like providing supplies, cooking meals, and doing jail support and risking arrest alongside the water protectors. The spiritual and religious practice of democracy takes many forms. Over and over again, I feel saved by watching both Unitarian Universalists and our broader movements for justice keep showing up over and over again as we try to create the conditions of possibility for all of us to thrive. From watching this work and from learning from it, I have distilled 3 basic imperatives for practicing democracy as a collective spiritual discipline and as a religious act. I want to share those with you. The first is that we must recommit to that which is worthy of our ultimate loyalty. 9 years before that Of All the People speech, Theodore Parker very famously spoke of the transient and permanent in Christianity. And he admonished the church to stop squabbling over forms and doctrines and to refocus on this worldly praxis of embodying love for the divine by enacting love for our human kin. Nearly 2 centuries later, we might reimagine that clarion call as a command to let go of the forms that no longer serve us and focus on new structures, new practices that allow us to better embody our values. Now, you are already doing this. The fact that I am joining worship from Minneapolis while some of your members are in their own homes or on the road, while some of you are sitting together, that's the future. That's a new practice. People coming together, grounded in covenant, who gather in a variety of ways to make meaning, deepen relationship, responding to the wounds of the world with centered humility and skill, yes. But it doesn't necessarily look like in-person Sunday morning worship followed by coffee hour and committees. There's somewhere in the middle that is where we will land and that is worthy of our recommitment. Second thing, we have to have a broader field of vision than just what is happening in our congregations. Our collective human crises are not going to wait for us while we fight over whether we can borrow from the endowment fund or restructure the program council or adopt the 8th principle. If more of our congregational energy is going towards maintaining our own institutions than towards building the world as it should be, then we have failed. The natural, faithful response to the blessing of being endowed with both freedom and dignity is to find your people in community, to build relationships of trust, to collectively and courageously take up the work of fighting for a world in which all of us are free and flourishing. That includes the folks in our walls, but it also includes our broader communities in partnership, whether or not we worship together on Sunday mornings. Thirdly, we have to take shifts for the revolution. If I am buried someday in a graveyard and that is my mantra on the epitaph, I will be happy, because the enterprise of incarnating the beloved community is work that we are neither solely responsible for nor exempt from engaging. Whether you're an elder, a child, whether you have physical limitations, financial limitations, whether you are an introvert who can't be in crowds of people or an extrovert who wants to talk to 1,000 a day, there is an intersection of the world's need, your skill, and your passion. And as religious leaders, we got to help everyone else that we work with discern their own place too. There is a shift to be taken. You can make art, you can organize your neighborhood or raise money or build the spreadsheet or the website, be the Zoom tech host, run for office, provide childcare, or get arrested at the direct action, but find your place, connect with your people, and expand your comfort zone. Take your shift. And then when you're done, Go rest and pray and let yourself be held and cared for so that you're ready to clock in again when your next shift starts. My friends, the urgency is overwhelming. The heartbreak is unrelenting and the stakes are unfathomably high. But like our religious ancestors, our faith reminds us that even in the face of all the brokenness, the biggest possible we, that beloved community of all the people, by all the people, for all the people, now that's an aspiration worthy of our fiercest commitment and our deepest loyalty. The spiritual practice of embodying, building, and fighting for true democracy is a source of hope and a path toward our collective liberation. May we be blessed, each and all of us, as we build together. May it be so. Blessed be, Ashe, and Amen. And now, folks, I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join us in our closing hymn, Love Will Guide Us, which is number 131 in the Gray Hymnal. Please remain standing and join us. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Amen. Beloveds, our service has ended. Friends on Zoom can stay in this main room to chat. Folks in person can enjoy a brief postlude from Tom before gathering for coffee hour in the parish hall. Thank you again for worshiping with us today, and be blessed.